We're not going to read the bulletin again. Let's start with chapter 22. Here we go. Shortly after the Big Alliance agreement was signed, a student in the Power Engineering Department, a former 4, returned to the university. He was shocked by the conditions of his old room in the dormitory. Students were not rolling up their quilts, hanging up their clothes, sweeping their quarters, or cleaning up after meals. These kids these days. On returning from study class, they shed their clothes like snakes shed their skins, climbed into rumpled quilts to sleep, and then rose to cook makeshift meals over coal stoves in the hall, throwing their garbage and ashes into any convenient corner. "Look what a mess you've made of the dorms," said the new arrival. When another former 4 supported him, Hu Jiaju of the regiment got very angry. He slapped his 2 former opponents in the face and bloodied the nose of one of them. Oh, I thought the violence was over. Apparently not. The newly returned student, blood on his jacket, ran to find Wang Yongxian, now a member of the Big Alliance Standing Committee. "Fights have been a dime a dozen at Tsinghua. We have been killing each other with spears and guns. What did a little nosebleed amount to?" said Wang Yongxian, who told us the story. "It was hardly worth making a fuss over, but I reported it to the PLA man assigned to our department and went back to sleep." All of a sudden, at 3 a.m., the Standing Committee members were called to an emergency meeting in the Water Conservation Building. It was all about this bloody nose. The cadres of the propaganda team headquarters considered it a serious violation of the July 3rd order. They said it amounted to a counter-revolutionary incident aimed at the team. We on the Standing Committee said, "It really doesn't amount to much, it's run-of-the-mill." But the team leaders disagreed. "We have a big alliance now," they said. "We have to get rid of factionalism and we have to get rid of violence." They felt that an incident like this could have a very bad effect, and that it might undermine the whole alliance if it was not dealt with properly. They considered it an unhealthy wind that must be stifled before it gathered momentum. So the issue was taken up by the Standing Committee with a request that a mass meeting be convened. There, Hu Jiazhu, brain, think for a second before you try to read names. Hu, that was easy. Jiazhu, okay, Jiazhu, maybe, would criticize himself. And the alliance leaders would criticize themselves for not having properly educated the rank and file, regardless of faction. All of the 4's delegates on the Standing Committee voted to hold the meeting, but Kauai couldn't agree. A regiment member had bloodied the nose of a 4. The whole thing made the regiment look bad. Why make a big public issue of it? Regiment people were afraid that they would lose too much face, perhaps even collapse as an organization. The propaganda team argued patiently that factions were not on trial. What was on trial was a dastardly act. If it was not repudiated, people would not dare to return to the campus, for they could expect nothing but endless violent incidents. Welcome to life as any sort of marginalized person in general in an American campus. Okay. Oh, what? The meeting went on for 2 days. The people on campus waited, and so did many of the city of Beijing. Everyone was waiting to see if the workers' propaganda team could control the situation. If this issue could be resolved well, it might mark a turning point. Not only did the team members debate with Kauai, but so did a lot of rank-and-file people. The meeting was held on the ground floor, and hundreds of people listened in through the open windows and even joined in the debate. The pressure for a public meeting was so great that in the end, Kauai had to agree. The first attempt to hold the mass meeting failed, however. Some regiment rods cut the loudspeaker wires so that none of the speeches could be heard. The event had to be postponed until the following day. For some reason, the sound system worked this time, and everything went off as planned. Shun Ruhuai sat in the chair. Hu Jiazhu made a detailed self-criticism, weeping all the while, and Kuai Dafu spoke for the Big Alliance Committee. Fucking crocodile tears, but okay. In the 3 years since that afternoon, there has not been a single violent incident on the campus. So the Standing Committee was correct to do something about it, is what I'm getting. This is still pretty wild. It was truly a turning point. After that, all of the remaining stayaways returned one by one. Of course, we still had factional feelings, and we often quarreled bitterly. But whenever a quarrel became tense, we reminded one another of Hu Jiaju, it's so hard to say, and cooled off. Violent fighting had been made to stink on the Tsinghua campus. From that day forth, it was against the law in fact as well as in name. In order to win agreement on the terms of the Big Alliance, each faction had met separately several times prior to August 16th. On the last of these occasions, when it was clear that an alliance was inevitable and that factional activity would become increasingly difficult, Kawai made a long speech to the regiment rods, urging them to persevere. He quoted from an old classic. Sleep on a wooden plank, eat bile, gather forces for 10 years, review the bitter lessons for another 10 years. It was a plea for organizational continuity, albeit underground, until conditions were more favorable. It was a plea for a comeback 20 years later. It proved that for Kawai, the Big Alliance was pure expediency. When the time was ripe, he intended to make another bid for power. Months earlier, a few of the leaders of the Fours had written a long article entitled "The Trend of Thought of April 14th Will Surely Win Out." Since they still adhered to this thesis, the Fours also looked on the Big Alliance as only an expedient. Since the main enemy was still considered to be Liu Shaoqi and the capitalist roaders allied with him, it was important to unite with the regiment rebels in order to beat down Liu. But later, the contradiction with the regiment must surely come to the fore again, and their organization must be smashed. They really do think the other one is the Kuomintang. They really do. There's... Well, yeah, we gotta fight off the Japanese, Liu Shaoqi. But, really, we need to get rid of the Kuomintang after that, so, They really think it. In late August and September, these two documents, Kawai's August 16th speech and the Fours article, became the heart of the curricula for all the study groups. Both violated Mao Zedong thought. Both took "I am the core" as their central theme and advocated one-sided victory rather than unity based on revolutionary principles. We love wannabe vanguardists. No, I'm the real vanguard. Yeah, you. The propaganda team encouraged the Fours to examine their article critically, while the regiment discussed Kawai's speech. As both groups began to see serious mistakes in their own policies, the two sides were brought together for further discussion. They discovered, much to their amazement, that they could sit down together and talk things over. But this was possible only because each was willing to admit mistakes, and because the propaganda team, rather than seizing on those mistakes to beat them down, used the admissions to encourage unity. Unity was also... There is no real vanguard, yeah? Welcome to the stream, ADS. Unity was also promoted by meetings to remember the past bitterness, the life in pre-liberation times, by careful study of Mao Zedong's writings and recent directives, and by reading important editorials and newspaper articles. Hold on. Wait, okay. There was, for instance, a statement Mao made summing up his southern trip of 1967, in which he stated categorically that there was no fundamental conflict of interest within the working class, and that consequently workers could and should unite. There was also an editorial about the theory of many centers, which amounted to a theory of no center, which amounted to anarchy, and there were articles such as the one in the New Anhui Daily, which pointed out that factionalism provides a shield for class enemies, and that class enemies promote and use factionalism for counter-revolutionary purposes. The theory of many centers. Yeah. I remember Enoch. I remember that whole two powers in heaven thing. Oh yeah. Back in my day. That shit was all the rage for a while, I really want to see somebody take this editorial by Mao about the theory of many centers and try to apply it specifically to Enoch. It would be really funny. I'm just saying. Metatron? What the fuck is that? What are you, an anarchist? You might as well believe in no power in heaven. The workers' propaganda team supplemented this reading and discussion with endless heart-to-heart talks and with reports from typical workers and typical commune members in plants and on farm brigades where factionalism had been effectively dissolved. All this brought results. More and more rank-and-file people were won over. A few leaders even began to soften their attitudes. One of these was Chun Yuyan, the most militant young woman on the regiment headquarters committee. Once she began to understand the true character of factionalism, she helped expose the mistakes of the regiment, especially the fighting of July 27th, and mobilized the rank-and-file to repudiate them. It was a slow process. At first, even self-criticism really took form, or the form of failed attack on the other side. Wang Yongshan of the Fours explained how this worked. At the start, he said, I had the idea that these classes were pretty good. We could clarify our differences and prove who had been right, us, and who wrong, them. Whenever we made a self-criticism, we always managed to attack the other side indirectly to show that we were right. Oh boy. I was in the same class with Chun Yuyan. Xue from the propaganda team urged us to fight to self-repudiate revisionism. Let's see here. Alright, repudiate revisionism with some genuine self-criticism. So Chun said, we made a mistake. We didn't treat the Force correctly. When they split away, we didn't try to unite with them or educate them. No matter how numerous their mistakes were, we should have tried to help the Force. This is the most backhanded self-criticism of all time. Oh my god. You're right. I'm sorry. I should have tried to help them realize how wrong they were, instead of just not talking to them. I know they constantly are making mistakes. Everything they say is wrong. And it's all my fault. It's my fault that for not trying to help them correct themselves. I'm so sorry. To this I responded, even though Chun was manipulated by Chiban Yu, she was deceived and we should not put her in the same category as the conscious wreckers. To which Chun came back with, of course, there were a lot of bad people in the Fours, but we should have made a distinction between these bad people and the masses. Both of these statements implied that the other side was riddled with truly bad people, the likes of which were not to be found on one's own side. In order to correct such misunderstandings and simultaneously clear the ranks of undesirables, the propaganda team urged each side to look into its own forces and expose the counter-revolutionaries and manipulators hidden there. The regiment had based its whole case on supposed counter-revolutionaries embedded in the Fours. Now they were forced to ask if they did not perhaps harbor some counter-revolutionaries of their own. Facts proved that they did. Is it just me, or is Kwai Dafu a counter-revolutionary? Am I wrong? Also, this tea smells really nice. What is that? Oh, that smells good. Okay, anyway. Again, I'm getting like a sort of pastry smell from a shupur. This happens sometimes. It's interesting. It smells really good. I can't tell what it exactly it is. It's like a fruity pastry. I don't know. Anyway. Let's see here. So, the most notorious of these counter-revolutionaries was Song Jingying, a leader of the Red Teachers Union who built up his reputation as a spokesman for the faculty radicals to the point where he was not only proposed by the regiment as a member of the Revolutionary Committee, which they tried to set up in May 1967, but he was elected to the regiment headquarters committee and its operating committee. Oh boy. It doesn't taste anything like that, though. Yeah, no, there's definitely a fruity smell there. And a bit of a pastry smell. It almost smells... You know what? It also smells a little bit vegetal. Like a... I don't know how to explain it. A sweet-smelling... I wouldn't say carrots, but like... I mean, carrots are relatively sugary vegetables. Right? I don't know how to explain it. Anyway. So, it was Sung, a gentleman of landlord origin. What a phrase. What a phrase. The gentleman of landlord origin. Do we have a better name for this? Or is that the... Just stop calling us the 1% or the ultra rich or billionaires. We're just people of means, persons of means. Stop calling us landlords. We're housing providers. Your entire job is based on not providing housing to people. That's your whole thing, is gatekeeping housing. You're not providing it to anyone. You're keeping other people from having housing unless they pay you a ridiculous amount of money and agree to your ridiculously extortionary terms. That's what a landlord does. That's their whole job. They're not providing anyone with housing. You know who provided the housing? The people who built the fucking building. Anyway, so this gentleman of landlord origin, who had first propounded the theory that the revolutionaries of the late 1960s must be sought among the people under attack and out of favor in the early 1960s. Sung had also publicized the idea that he, a professor of engineering with a salary of 200 yuan a month, was more revolutionary than a Communist Party cadre with a salary of 40 yuan a month, because his political status was lower. He wielded no political power. He was, in his own view, oppressed. Therefore, he was a revolutionary. He's oppressed because he has more money. Well, I think that's actually a I think that's the author adding in the salary bit to illustrate how ridiculous this is. He's saying he's oppressed because he's not a member of the Communist Party. But he's a goddamn landlord. Well, he's not a landlord anymore. He's a gentleman of landlord origin. Now he's an engineering professor who makes way more money than any random Communist Party member. And he thinks he's oppressed. I really wish there was a good way to know how much 200 yuan was worth in 1966, 65-ish, but I can't find any good inflation numbers for that. Let me search 1965 yuan inflation. Economic history of China, that's not useful. I cannot find anything that goes back far enough, that's the problem. Economic history of China, 1949 to present. This is useless. Let me click. The World Bank inflation data only goes back to 1987, y'all. Oh, but I have an article about 1953 to 1978 inflation in China, which doesn't overlap with our 1987 World Bank data. Okay, so I have some reconstructed inflation data going all the way up to 2017 here. Huh. And they've reconstructed back to 1950-ish, 1950 something. So if I really wanted to, I could probably figure out oh my god. Like, the inflation rate varied between starting, okay, so let's say 1965 as our starting point, as like 0, because it looks like it's around 0 there. Here, let me show you. This is what I'm looking at, okay. So if 1965 here is a little bit under 0, actually there's a bit of deflation in 1965 apparently. This is what it was published by the Bureau of Statistics, actually. Hold on. Do they have their reconstruction appears to be very similar to what was officially published. But anyway, so here's the reconstruction, I guess. So in 1965, again, both their model and the official data have some deflation. But anyway, as you can see, it slowly rose on average up to around 2% towards 1980, and then it shot up officially, though in their model it actually didn't shoot up very much. In their model, it rose steadily to around maybe 2.5% or so to 1985, from maybe -1 or -2%. In 1965. Huh. So someone would have to go through this and calculate for every single year the difference. And I don't want to do that. That would be a pain. Wouldn't it? I mean, well, not necessarily. Let's pretend that it's linear, okay? And that up to 1984, let's go from 1965 to 1984 so that we can calculate the difference between 1965 and 1984. And let's just take a linear average, okay? So let's say, since 1965 appears to be about -1, and 1984 appears to be literally 1984, which is, by the way, this is Deng Xiaoping times now. I wonder where all this extra inflation came from. Anyway, so literally 1984. Isn't that when he also got rid of the workers' right to strike in the Chinese constitution? Am I wrong? Is that the year? Literally 1984? Because that would be a little bit too on point. Anyway, this looks about 2%, approximately. Ish, 2%. So it went from like -1 to 2%. So the average is like, well, -1 to 0, 0 to 1, 1 to 2, literally 1984. Oh boy. Literally 1984. 2% inflation. Let's see here. So I gotta think about this. Is this just a 1% average then? Is that the middle point? I can't believe I have to actually write this out, but I'm gonna have to write this out. Okay, -1, 0, 1, 2. No. The middle point is 0.5% inflation. Sorry. Yeah, I'm glad I wrote it down. I'm not thinking. Anyway, so on average, we had 0.5% inflation for these. What is this? 19 years. 65 to 66. Let's just call, okay, anyway, 0.5% inflation on average, because there's a lot of negative inflation. Okay, anyway, deflation. Wow, really? Okay. Anyway, so let's see. I don't think this is, this is totally wrong, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, so we're gonna do 1.05 to the 19th power or something, right? To the 19th power. Okay. So that's our inflation between those 2 years, about multiplied by about 2.5. So 200 yuan a month. Now we just go to the inflation calculator. Oh, that only goes back to 1987. Well, let's just pretend that there wasn't very much inflation between 84 and 87. Okay, let's just say it was 200 in 1965. So now it's 500 in 1984, literally. And let's just increase it, since the inflation massively increased after that. Let's call it 600 in 1984. Is now 2,832 in 2023. Okay. Now, what is that in USD? That is, where's, okay, hold on. $2,832. Let's see here. $387 a month. USD. So I'm on a $4,600 a year. Now, that was the most fast and loose fucking inflation calculation I could have done, but like, we don't have time to actually go through it properly. I didn't want to have to go through the whole table and multiply literally every single year by the correct inflation rate, okay? Oh boy, that was very napkin math right there. But anyway, my point is, so he was making more than 4 times as much than the Communist Party guys, but he's oppressed, apparently. Therefore, he's inherently a revolutionary. So he says. In 1966, after Wang Guangmei's work team left the campus and as the Jingangshang regiment began to win power, he announced that he too wished to rebel. Okay, landlord, I'm going to sell my piano and do what I can to support the rebels if that means only sweeping the floor and carrying water. I think that was a little bit of I'm not sure how sincere he was with that. His willingness to perform such menial tasks made a deep impression on everyone. Visitors from the outside, seeing him at work, asked, "Who is that?" "An old professor," replied the regiment members, shaking their heads with amazement at an intellectual who was not afraid to soil his hands. Wherever there was action, Song tended to take the lead. Oh, gee. He helped raid the arms stores at the university and led the attack on the Beijing Security Bureau when the madman of the modern age, Chen Lining, was held there. Did China invent liberal oppression Olympics? Oh my god. Oh boy. In May 1967, not long after the fours split from the regiment in the dispute over which cadres deserved support, they learned from Song's son that Song had been a member of the Kuomintang. By the way, they publicized this information on a big character poster and blasted the regiment for harboring such a man. Regiment's leaders then went to Song and asked about his past. I was a Kuomintang member, Song said, but that was a mere formality, a move to protect my rice bowl. I never lived through one day of party life. The regiment leaders believed him and eventually published an article in their factional paper about the good non-party cadre Song Jingying. This article put the fours temporarily off the track. In time, Song's activism and good behavior allayed any lingering suspicion that remained. Later, when people asked Song's defenders in the regiment how they knew he was all right, they said, "We got our material from him." Actually, the attempted exposure by the fours helped Song. The regiment, unwilling even to consider the idea that it sheltered bad people, rallied to his defense as soon as he was attacked. As former regiment member Wu Wei-yu said, "Some people were obviously no good." Not to be confused with Wu Wei-ting, aka Bear, aka the guy who took his shirt off and tried to throw a grenade at the workers. Some people were obviously no good, but if the other side attacked them, it was taken as an attack on the whole faction, so everyone rallied to their support. If, on the contrary, we had struggled against them and exposed them, it would have been like struggling against ourselves. It reflected on us that we have such good people in our ranks, so we defended them to the end as good, not bad. As factional feelings simmered down after the big alliance, everyone began to look with more objectivity at people with historical problems, and Song's case came up once more. Even though Song refused to talk himself, his son now exposed the fact that his father had joined the Kuomintang not once but twice. Student investigators were sent to the county outside Beijing, where Song had lived at the time. There they found people who had acted as his sponsors, in joining the organization, and people who had been members of the same Kuomintang unit. With this material in hand, the investigators returned to question Song. They also urged his family to persuade him to make a clean breast of the whole story. Finally, aware that a frank confession could lead to lenient treatment, Song recounted his former reactionary activities, including many facts still unknown to his listeners. It turned out that he had not only been a member of the Kuomintang, but had risen to the position of district head. Furthermore, he had been in charge of the maintenance work for a Kuomintang army unit that was engaged in war against the People's Liberation Army. All this would ordinarily have been enough to put him in the category of a historical counter-revolutionary. But because he had not committed serious crimes as Kuomintang district secretary, because he had frankly exposed his past, and because he had worked well afterward, he was treated not as an enemy but as one of the people. His own view was that the workers' propaganda team had saved him. I was afraid every day that I would be found out, and I thought that once I was found out, I would be done for I did not really believe there was such a thing as good treatment. When they asked him why he stepped forward as an active rebel during the Cultural Revolution, he said, "To protect myself, I pretended to be a rebel so that I wouldn't be discovered and exposed as a reactionary." Help? Remember this. The next time somebody argues that we should be letting ex-Nazis into our spaces. But some of these ex-Nazis are the most passionate people I've ever met about like the rights of minorities. Are they really that passionate about it, or are they just doing that so that you don't kick them out? And so that they can like yell at you, the minorities, for daring to say that maybe the Nazi in the group shouldn't be there. You ungrateful minorities. Man. He did a good confession, said his 5 Hail Mao prayers, and was forgiven. Oh my god. It's actually long live Chairman Mao. Thank you very much. Don't you know? And you had to do the loyalty dance too. Remember, 1 word of Mao's is worth 10,000 words. I'm sorry. I cannot miss the opportunity to make fun of Lin Biao. I'm sorry. I can't. Okay. Anyway. So. But this explanation did not satisfy the students or the propaganda team. To say that he only wanted to protect himself did not fully explain his acts, Lu Fengzheng said. He not only covered up his past, he posed as a revolutionary, deceived a section of the masses, and led the masses to fight one another. He spread the reactionary theory that the revolutionaries of today are those who were suppressed yesterday, and he seized arms and attacked police headquarters. In other words, he voluntarily stepped out of the stage of history and tried to play a role. Or stepped out on the stage. Didn't this make him a conscious counter-revolutionary? If he had stayed home, he might have slipped through. He chose an active role and thereby exposed himself, which only goes to show that counter-revolutionaries do not voluntarily step aside. People struggle before they die, an old classical quotation. In 1971, Song Jingying was once again on the teaching staff of Tsinghua. He had been assigned to an automobile factory and he had organized a research project with other staff members. His group had already come up with some valuable innovations. His future seemed fairly bright. Counter-revolutionaries and people with questionable historical records were also found among the Fours. One of these was Li Kang, the man the regiment seized and tortured, and the Fours defended to the end. It seems he had a suspect past, but in July 1971, his case had still not been settled. As part of his contribution to the manipulation of the masses, he had helped develop the thesis embodied in the Trend of Thought of April 14th will surely win out, which had deepened factionalism and prolonged the fighting. Another of the Fours who turned out to be a class enemy had fought bravely throughout the 100-Day War, apparently without a thought for personal safety. It turned out that he had an ulterior motive, however. He wanted to train himself in military affairs and retreat to the mountains for guerrilla war.
What the fuck did you just fucking say about me, you little bitch? I'll have you know that I graduated top of my class in the Navy SEALs, have been involved in numerous secret raids on Al-Qaeda, and have over 300 confirmed kills. I've been trained in guerrilla warfare, and I'm gonna...
Ow. Oh my god. If the fighting went on long enough, not many people would be left. Then he and his small clique would dominate the Fours and turn them into a counter-revolutionary instrument. He tried all kinds of tricks to win people to his side. Sorry. He studied small personal habits. If someone liked to smoke, he'd light the brand they preferred and smoke alongside them. If someone expressed conservative thoughts, he'd sympathize and fan them. Does this remind you of anybody? Hey, nerds. So, this maybe this is a bit out of left field, but density. No, I'm thinking about someone completely different. I'm thinking about an historical figure, a Japanese historical figure specifically. Oh boy. I'm thinking about Senno Rikyu. I know. Are you serious? Really? Is that really what comes to mind? Yes. Sorry. Abraham Lincoln. No. Abraham Lincoln, technically speaking, was a Japanese historical figure. I'm kidding. But you know, there was a small period of time during which a samurai could have sent a telegram to Abraham Lincoln. Maybe. I'm pretty sure that might have been debunked at this point, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, they totally had telegrams back then. No, I think it's probably true, right? I don't know. Anyway, I want to believe that's true. They didn't, but it would be funny if they did. What about that guy who challenged Karl Marx to a duel and then ran away to the United States after Karl Marx didn't show up to the duel, and became a U.S. Army general in the Civil War or whatever? The fuck is that guy's name? Oh my god. Anyway, he thought that Marx was like a secret counter-revolutionary spy or something, I think. Like he thought Marx was a cop, I think, maybe. I can't remember. Maybe I'm getting the story wrong, I can't remember. I'll look it up, hold on. Alright, who is this guy? August Willich. August Willich. August Willich. There we go. That's his name. He was a brigadier general in the in the U.S. Army, and then a major general. He was a major general. After that, let's see here. Let's see here. Did he die? Well, of course he died, but I mean, he died, he died age 67 after the war. He didn't die in the war, y'all. So anyway, he was a communist, who discarded his title of nobility. He challenged, let's see here. He plotted to, yeah, so let me explain. No, it's not even fast jacketing. It's he challenged Karl Marx to a duel. He and his friend Emmanuel Barthélemy Vivi de Guitron plotted to kill Karl Marx for being too conservative. Marx refused to fight. What a coward. Anyway, instead, some other guy, some friend of Marx, showed up, and they fought the duel, and nobody died. But then that other guy, this Emmanuel guy, his friend, actually ended up getting executed, like in 1855, after he shot and killed his boss. Too conservative. Damn, this person was right. Yeah. Yeah, he wanted to kill Karl Marx because Marx was too conservative. I think it's quite wild that would be something you kill Marx over, specifically, though. Really? Is he really that conservative? So conservative that you need to kill him right now? Is he that much of a threat? Like, I don't know, what's the modern equivalent of this? Would it be like doxing and swatting a sockdom YouTuber? Is that the modern equivalent? This guy's too conservative. We have to get him killed. I don't know. I don't think sockdom YouTubers have the same kind of political reach and influence that that Karl Marx did. I'm just gonna put that out there. First of all, they're more right than Karl Marx. More right-wing, that is. Not correct. They're incorrect. Sockdoms are a fucking joke. Anyway. Sorry, back to the... Oh, boy. Let's see here. So this guy studied people's personal habits and tailored his interactions with them to be favorable with them as much as possible. And this reminded me of Sonorikyu with his specially tailored tea ceremonies and political fuckery. Anyway, this student was among those who had repeatedly urged Wang Yongqian, the commander of the force in the science building, to break out of the regiment's siege regardless of consequences. If I had listened to him, we would all be dead, said Wang. After he was exposed, we realized how deeply factionalism had blinded us to the political character of some of our allies. Hey, does that sound familiar to anyone? Exposing and weeding out class enemies from the ranks on both sides was indeed a potent education for everyone. Up to that point, few had realized how easily a reactionary could maneuver under the cover of a false red flag. And how provocative their words and acts could be. They were also shocked to find how careless they had all been accepting support simply because it was offered, defending people simply because they were attacked, without making any thoroughgoing investigation of the background or political position of such allies. So-called allies. Chapter 23. Kauai's Last Stand. Oh boy, here we fucking go. The intensive study in September widened the support given the propaganda team. Led many people to re-examine their factional commitments and mobilized them to expose rather than defend past mistakes. But the hardcore leaders remained untouched. On Friday evenings, word went around among the rods of each side about where to meet that Saturday or Sunday, the Western Hills, the Summer Palace, or Tiananmen Square. Then those who were still loyal would gather to complain. Nice emojis, nice. Would gather to complain about the shambles their organization had fallen into and discuss what to do in order to recoup their losses. If the meeting place was the Summer Palace, the regiment diehards would rent a rowboat, go way out on the lake, sing factional songs, and recall the glorious deeds of the past, when Kwai Da-fu held power on the campus, and distant masses waited breathless for his telegrams. Did you see that one, Netanyahu spokesperson who did an interview and said, I can tell you that we are not targeting anyone else in Gaza but civilians. Oh, thanks. Yeah, we know. But good to hear it, I guess. Thanks. Anyway, sorry for the diversion. I saw that. I'm just like, well, at least they admit it. So anyway, so those who were still loyal would gather to complain about the shambles their organization had fallen into and discuss what to do in order to recoup their losses. That Freudian slip was real, yeah. Considering they've killed like what, 13 Hamas people and 7,000 random civilians, sounds about right to me. So anyway, those who were still loyal would gather to complain about the shambles their organization had fallen into and discuss what to do in order to recoup their losses. If the meeting place was the Summer Palace, the regiment diehards would rent a rowboat, go way out on the lake, sing factional songs, and recall the glorious deeds of the past when Kwai Da-fu held power on the campus and distant masses waited breathless for his telegrams. What kind of songs did they sing? They had factional songs. Oh right, I remember. We saw the lyrics to one factional song earlier in the book. What do you think? What kind of songs did they have? All right, folks. I call this one Kawaii Dafu is a stinky poop face. Kawaii Dafu is a stinky poop face. He smells so bad. Oh yeah. Okay, anyway. We felt, said Ruiyu, that it wouldn't do to go on as we were. If we continued to in this direction, we were finished. People were dropping away every day. We had to do something to recoup our prestige. We thought that we still had some prestige. We thought that we still had some capital with the masses, so we ought to make use of it before it was too late. We thought we could still attack the Luo Wan Li Rao clique, expose and crush the leading core of the Fours, and create a situation where only the regiment held power. You know, I said I say stinky poop face, you know, as a joke, but actually, remember, there was an entire faction that were called the Make Wind faction because they had said that the other faction that they didn't like whenever they talked, they were just farting or whatever. I can't remember the exact thing, but that was like, I'm just saying, this is the exact same this is the same level of insults that they were actually using. Your words are nothing but a dog making wind. Anyway. So, prior to October 1st, everyone was too busy studying to act, but the celebrations commemorating National Day brought a hiatus in the program of the propaganda team. Key factional leaders like Shun Ruhuai were released from class to help organize Qinghua's National Day program, and Kuai found time one Saturday night to call together a meeting of the rods. We are gathered here today. I have brought you together to discuss how we can take the initiative at Qinghua, said Kuai. Once we bring the problem of the Luo Wan Li Rao into the open, the propaganda team can hardly answer us. The people will be mobilized, and the team will lose control of the movement. Kuai was too smart, however, to begin with his full program. Instead, he drafted a letter to the Central Committee reviewing the merits of the Jingangchong Regiment and complaining about the fact that all its power had now been taken away by the propaganda team that was riding roughshod over the campus. At the same time, he found 4 people in his headquarters committee who had not taken part in the violent fighting of July 27th, and therefore still had some grounds to make complaints. They wrote a poster which made a small point of order critical of the team. The issue they chose was Shun Ruhuai's absence from classes. This had been thoroughly debated in the Big Alliance Committee and voted on by all. Now Kuai's lieutenants protested that the workers' propaganda team was not fair. They allowed the leader of one faction to miss study. Furthermore, the poster said Shun Ruhuai was a counter-revolutionary who didn't even deserve equal treatment, such as inclusion in regular classes, not to mention special treatment, such as the right to organize for the October 1st celebration. The enemy, said the poster, is in front of our faces. To fight self-interest means to fight the enemy here on campus. This was only another way of saying that Shun should be the target of attack and not the leaders of the regiment. Regiment Rods hoped and expected that this poster would once again mobilize the rank and file to take the offensive against the Fours and the propaganda team. They thought it would stimulate a rash of posters in support and produce a new rebel groundswell. They were grievously disappointed. By evening, plenty of posters had gone up on the campus, but instead of supporting it the initial thrust, they were opposed to it, taking it apart sentence by sentence and attacking those who wrote it. I love Twitter. The opposition posters were signed so-and-so, a proletarian revolutionary from the United Masses. Regiment Rods watched closely to see if most of these posters came from the former fours. If so, they would have an issue. To their dismay, they found that they came from former activists on both sides, and as the posters piled up, they more and more concentrated their attack on Kwai's order to shoot workers, and on his August 16th speech advocating a comeback in 20 years. If you can't fight self, several posters warned Kwai, will remove you from office. These posters were concentrated around the Quiet House where the study classes were held. Few posters had ever been posted there. Now suddenly they appeared by the thousands to refute the regiment's position. More mats had to be put up to make room for them all, and the call from the masses to settle accounts with Kwai's crimes became louder and louder. We hadn't even begun to settle accounts with you for the death of 5 workers. You say you have no self-interest to fight. If you don't change that attitude, we'll settle accounts with you. Since you have brought up the issue, we'll take you up on it. Little maneuvers, such as the factional meetings at the Summer Palace and the gathering of material about the propaganda team, were also publicly exposed, and questions were raised concerning all those strange happenings of July 27th, which at the time had seemed spontaneous, but which now looked as if they might have had some pattern. A pattern linked to Kwai Dafu. Up to this point, Kwai had maintained that the shooting began down below on the spur of the moment, but posters written by the masses said that Kwai had given an order and had even signed his name to it. The more the Regiment Rods denied this, the more evidence the people in the workers' propaganda team brought forth. The ideological struggle became very sharp, and the longer it went on, the more clear it became that the regiment, far from having any capital with which to appeal to the masses, had actually committed some very bad crimes which required answers and explanations. Very bad crimes. So bad. You know those regiment people, when they send their people, they're not sending their best. Very bad people. Such bad crimes. Chun Difang, one of the key regiment leaders, who had up to this point loyally supported Kwai, now decided that things had gone too far. He mobilized an inside group that collectively exposed the whole Luo Wan Li Rao frame-up. He produced evidence that the counter-revolutionary statements made by the four had been extracted under torture. Chun knew about the torture, which Kwai claimed to be unaware of because he had organized an internal investigation during the period of violent fighting and had seen the treatment meted out to his counter-revolutionary clique with his own eyes. The counter-revolutionary clique. A few days after the first poster aroused such a wave of opposition, Kwai himself, together with 12 others, put up an opinion in support of the original position. He said that important problems concerning the team's methods and fairness had been raised. Therefore, there should be a debate. The propaganda team took up the challenge and organized a mass debate to which all headquarters and branch headquarters members of both factions were invited. At this meeting, all the material gathered for the posters was presented verbally, and Lu Fengzheng, propaganda team leader in the Beijing garrison, read aloud Kwai's July 27th order to the regiment fighting teams to shoot. Unable to counter this offensive directly, Kwai charged that the team had spread false rumors about the events of that day, but team cadres refuted this with evidence that it was Kwai, not the team, who had spread false rumors. Kwai had told all who would listen that workers had arrested and beaten up students. He could say things like that because most of his listeners were not eyewitnesses but had been absent from the campus. Asked for facts at the meeting, he was unable to come up with any, so his position collapsed. After this meeting, Kwai and some comrades wrote a clarifying point, saying that they had made mistakes, but that their position had been misunderstood. When this clarifying point was also repudiated, Kwai finally wrote a poster saying, "I surrender to the working class." But even this was only a maneuver. Privately, he still worked hard to hold the regiment together. He led a group to the Summer Palace to be photographed with their Jingangchang armbands on, and when Bear left for a year of work at the PLA farm, or APLA farm, Kawhi saw to it that dozens of Mao badges were pinned to his chest. Regiment rods all hugged Bear and cried. Bear's crimes were great enough to warrant repudiation and punishment, but his comrades gave him a hero's send-off. Bear's crimes. Remember, Bear's crimes were specifically, among other things, attempted mass murder of random people. Just to be clear, he was literally about to throw a hand grenade into a crowd of protesting workers. When somebody knocked the grenade out of his hand. Remember this, okay? He may be called Bear, which is a nice, cuddly, fluffy name, but he's a bad guy. So anyway, his crimes were great enough to warrant repudiation and punishment, but his comrades gave him a hero's send-off. Obviously, Kawhi was still working night and day to hold the regiment together. This was still possible because there were people like Ju who felt that all the study had become nothing but an attack on the regiment. Ju had left the campus before the propaganda team came and was fired on. He had returned only in mid-September. The fact that his side had killed and wounded workers sent by Chairman Mao seemed to him to be decisive. It was like falling and breaking one's backbone. How could any member of the regiment ever stand up again? Blech. My sinuses need to stop. How could any member of the regiment ever again boast of past merits? This one incident was enough for the opposition to lay hold of and permanently beat all regiment supporters down. Yet Ju was still loyal to the regiment and to the glorious rebel past. Since there was no way out, he would go down with the rest. After all, as far as he was concerned, the Fours were hopeless conservatives. What had they ever done but curse the regiment? That was, it seemed, their whole program. They had built a movement cursing the regiment, and now they were still at it. The team members nevertheless maintained a friendly attitude toward Ju. They blamed the violent fighting, not on the faction as a whole, but on a few bad or hoodwinked members. It's just a few bad apples. They consistently maintained that the regiment rods were good revolutionaries, and that they had played an important, even a crucial role during the work team period, and for many months afterward. As for the Fours, were they not also good revolutionaries? Surely they must be seen as comrades who opposed the capitalist road, and not as enemies. If they had criticisms of the regiment, shouldn't one examine them on their merits, and accept those that were true? Hold on, I have to do something that would break TOS if I showed it on the screen. I'll be right back. Oh my god. Okay, back. I had to adjust my bra, which apparently counts as excessive touching of the female breast. Even if you aren't a woman. I mean, I am, but I mean, Finster wasn't, and still isn't. When they banned him for that, I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm still mad about that. It's misogyny is what it is. I don't know what else to say. They have different standards for how we're supposed to act and dress on stream based on our gender. Sounds like fucking sexism to me, Twitch. I don't know. Anyway. So, in the end, Ju too was won over. When he examined the criticisms made of the regiment, he decided that in the main they were true, that the Fours had uncovered precisely the regiment's weak points, and that the weakest point of all was the regiment Rod's conviction that they and they alone were revolutionaries. This made it impossible for them to follow Mao's advice and unite 95% of the people and 95% of the cadres in opposition to Liu Xiaoqi and for the socialist transformation of Tsinghua. sounds like Twitch needs their TOS rearranged. That sounds like a violent threat. Yeah, boss. Want me to rearrange this man's TOS? Lu Fangzheng, who played a leading role in the propaganda team throughout, summed up this period by saying, "We learned from this struggle that bourgeois factionalism..." Oh, pardon me. We learned from this struggle that bourgeois factionalism and mountaintopism is very stubborn. We learned that one has to struggle against it continuously. If we don't struggle against them, how will we, or they will struggle against us, sorry. If we don't fight back, we cannot maintain our position on the campus, Mao Zedong's policies can't be carried out, and the movement for struggle, criticism, and transformation can't advance one step. Even though factionalism is so stubborn, we must hold fast to the main orientation of our work and educate and unite the student masses. We must use reason to convince them. Most members of the masses can accept working-class education, support working-class leadership, and follow Mao Zedong's policies. Facts prove this. The overall results were good. As winter approached, most of the leaders on both factions got together. They even put joint plays on stage under the slogan, "Welcome to the Big Alliance Study Class." And in the classes they behaved well. Only a few, like Kuai and for a long time Bear, remained diehards. Of course, Bear. Of course. In the end, even Bear was moved to make a serious self-criticism. "I'm sorry I tried to throw a grenade at a group of random people who were protesting. I'm sorry. That was wrong of me. But I won't apologize for taking off my shirt before doing it. That was badass. And you can't deny it." The Big Alliance, the study classes, the patience, and the protracted work of the members of the propaganda team so changed the climate of opinion on the Tsinghua campus that in January 1969, it was possible to form a revolutionary committee along the lines originally proposed by Mao Zedong. That is, a committee of mass representatives, cadres, and People's Liberation Army personnel. Welcome to the stream, Jane Doe. How you doing? This revolutionary committee then led the whole university in a review of the politics and class background of everyone on campus, exposing the reactionaries, the Kuomintang agents, the criminal characters who had crept into the ranks. The creeping criminal characters. Anyway, who had crept into the ranks of the mass movement on both sides, having cleared the class ranks. The committee went on to lead a party rectification movement which had as its goal the weeding out of unqualified people, the reinstatement, I think I was supposed to say of and not as, of party members in good standing of all healthy elements, or no, it is as actually. Reinstatement as party members in good standing, all healthy elements, okay. And the recruitment into the party of outstanding new people who had played a role in the Cultural Revolution. This movement took the better part of a year, and it wasn't until January 1970 that the new party committee of Tsinghua University was established. Only then did the movement to transform the educational system really get underway. I like how this whole book, the whole events here, start with a bunch of students wanting to transform the educational system because it's very conservative and modeled after Western universities, which are a total mess, to put it lightly, and only ever getting worse these days. Anyway, and then it took them years of literally killing each other to finally get around to actually doing something about the original problem. So here we go. Chapter 40, or chapter 41. Chapter 24. Here we go. Carrying poles for Parker 51s. Whatever that means. This account has concentrated on the students and staff members who made up the mass movement. Almost nothing has been said about the set-aside cadres. But in the fall of 1968, the workers' propaganda team also did a great deal of work among the higher cadres who had been removed from office in 1966 and now needed rehabilitation. The first task was to find them and win their release. Early in the morning hours of July 28, 1968, when Kuai decided that the regiment must retreat from the campus, he sent Liu Bing, the former vice secretary of the University Party Committee, and other capitalist roaders held by the regiment to Chongping County, where they were held along with ordinary prisoners seized from the ranks of the Fours. The August 7th release of prisoners from both sides did not include set-aside cadres, and before the 300 members of the propaganda team arrived at Nankou to set free the regiment's captives, Liu and his colleagues were transferred to hidden lockups on the grounds of the Aeronautical Institute. They were moved several times thereafter, but were released on August 29th, when all prisoners were finally freed by both sides. Liu Bing was immediately put into a study class led by members of the propaganda team. In November, he was sent back to his original unit, the University Party Committee, to study jointly with them. Finally, the party rectification movement in 1969 helped Liu to think through and understand all that had happened to him since 1966 and to recognize his mistakes prior to that time. In July 1967, I began to realize that I had made some mistakes, said Liu Bing, but I didn't have any deep understanding of them. In October, when both factions began to study and discuss the old educational line, I began to understand more. But it wasn't until the workers' propaganda team came that I arrived at any deep understanding and began to have an overall analysis. This was because we studied Mao Zedong thought together with the team cadres, not as targets of attack, but as students seeking knowledge. Together we were able to repudiate Liu Shaqi's line and review our own line. By early 1969, I began to see things quite clearly. Then the party rectification movement began, and this cleared up all the remaining problems. Each of us used Chairman Mao's 15-character slogan to examine himself to see if he was up to standard. The slogan reads as follows: 50, not 15. 50-character slogan. This is the slogan translated into English.
Mao's 50-character slogan reads as follows: The party organization should be composed of the advanced elements of the proletariat. It should be a vigorous and vital organization of vanguards which can lead the proletariat and the revolutionary masses in struggle against the class enemy.
So anyway, they used that slogan, to examine themselves and to see if they were up to the standard. The non-party members also took part and organized mutual aid groups. Each of us made a self-criticism and listened to criticism from the masses, sometimes in front of the whole university. In April, I passed. We were all liberated. Then I joined another study class and went to work in the campus truck manufacturing shop, where I helped set up the shop revolutionary committee and took part in its meetings. In the meantime, in January 1969, the Qinghua Revolutionary Committee was set up. It had none of the old top-level cadres in it, but in January 1970, when the new party committee was established, I was elected vice secretary, the same position I had held before. Liu Bing was returned to power as vice secretary of the party committee because the propaganda team and large numbers of staff and students thought that he had really learned the lessons of the whole movement. For us, he summed up these lessons in 3 points. 1. The revolution divides into stages, but the revolution continues. I feel that a communist must not see only the current stage, but the stage that is coming, the tasks of the future. We made a serious mistake after our victory in the whole country in 1949. Yeah, you think? Our thinking stopped with the democratic revolution. We were victorious. The working class was in power. The socialist revolution had to be carried forward, but our thinking stopped. So, this guy's talking like an anarchist. Oh my god, an ultra leftist. Ew. What do you mean the revolution doesn't end after the proletariat seizes power? What do you mean they actually have to do something good with that power? What? What do you mean? What are you talking about? What do you mean it's not over just from seizing the state? What? Impossible. Ultra leftism, yeah. Pure anarchy. Anyway. So. The socialist revolution had to be carried forward, but our thinking stopped. Yep. And this was even more true after socialist ownership was established throughout the economy and the struggle went into the superstructure. We weren't prepared for such a shift. Our subjective understanding fell way behind objective developments. Yeah. Serious and complicated class struggle was the order of the day, but we were blind and didn't see what was going on. We made bad mistakes. So bad. So one had to grasp the idea of stages on one hand and of the revolution continuing on the other. One can't go beyond the stage one is in. The liberals said I could just vote. So, would you like to vote for the guy who finished the border wall and has deported more people than any other president ever, and has made it much harder for trans men to access testosterone, and is actively supporting multiple literal actual genocides? Or would you like to vote for the other guy who would do the same things but be more honest about it? Apparently, to liberals, if I don't vote for the first guy, who at least kind of maybe pretends a little bit to not be doing those bad things, if I don't vote for him, I'm a horrible person, or something. Okay then. Okay then. So, as he says, we made bad mistakes. So one has to grasp the idea of stages on the one hand and of the revolution continuing on the other. One can't go beyond the stage one is in, nor can one stop once that stage is completed. To sum up, the revolution develops by stages and the revolution continues. 2. Every individual is a motive force and also a target of the revolution. From both positive and negative experience, we have learned that each one of us must transform his own outlook. If you don't transform yourself, you can't lead the masses to fight the enemy. For example, when we carried out the bourgeois reactionary line, the revisionist line, it was because we had the wrong thinking in our heads. We couldn't tell what was what. We couldn't distinguish the class nature of our policies, what was regular and what was not. Why was Resistance University called only a training class, and why were they now calling it a regular school? What was meant by regular? Whose regular did we want? The difference between regular and not regular is a question of class stand. We were educated under the old system. From our youth, we were influenced by the bourgeois educational system. I used to read stories about Edison, Fulton, and Watt. Oh my god, Edison, of all people. Edison, one of the worst guys of all time. Oh my god, sorry. Blech. That made me dizzy. So anyway, I thought, even if they didn't go to college, colleges are to train people like them. So after they said that our Yan'an school was not a regular school, I thought it probably wasn't. Why did I accept the idea of the Professor's Communist Party? Because I had wrong ideas in my head. The idea of the Professor's Communist Party, by the way, we explained earlier, way earlier in the book, but basically some of these professors thought, oh, we should be in charge of the Communist Party because we're smarter. You know, they basically had like a meritocracy or technocracy thing going on. That was their idea. We're better than everyone else because we know more about electrical engineering or whatever. Yeah. Does my electrical engineering degree make me fit to control the party of the vanguard of the proletariat? Hey, proletarians. Hey, folks. I have a question. Can I be in charge? I have an engineering degree. Oh, boy. Oh, my God. Okay. I didn't know it was that easy. Holy shit. In Wisconsin, all you need is a bachelor's degree to be a teacher there. You can be like a high school teacher or whatever. You just need any bachelor's degree in anything. No teaching license required. Wisconsin is a mess. You can be in charge of me. Babe. Oh my fucking God. You'd vote for me over Joe? That's the lowest fucking bar you could... You'd vote for me over Genocide Joe. Oh, I'm so flattered. You saw your chance. Yeah, you did, honey. You sure did. Boy. Right, so I hereby announce my campaign to become the President of the United States of America. Doesn't matter that constitutionally I'm not even old enough to be president. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. We're gonna do it anyway. When I am elected president, I will make sure that every town has a Femboy Hooters. And everyone in the country gets a pony. Wait, hold on, that's Vermin Supreme's fucking platform. Well, except for the Femboy Hooters. I don't know if he supports universal Femboy Hooters, but I would. Everyone would have access to have a government subsidized access to Femboy Hooters. Yeah, it would be added to the Constitution and everything. And also, I won't do any genocide. And I will make healthcare free for all trans people. Well, it would be free in general for everyone. But like, yeah. Also, tattoos would be counted as gender-affirming care for trans people and would be subsidized by the government. This is if I'm... So this is the thing about... what if you were president arguments. As an anarchist, there's only... Like, I'm going with it, but like, really, if I was elected president, what the fuck would I do? You can't, as the president, you can't just like actually abolish the government as the president. You're the fucking head of state. What are you gonna do? You can't do that from the inside. So anyway. Alright, let's see here. I would remove Ron DeSantis as governor of Florida by executive order. Oh shit. Now that's tyranny. Alright, so anyway, this guy thought that they should have a meritocracy. So last night I was in a trans girl stream, right? Oh god, a Twitch partner. I'm only a Twitch affiliate trans woman, you know, okay. I'm not as cool. Anyway, this guy had the wrong ideas in his head. She was in... Wait, what? Before I started the stream, I was joking about only wearing the mesh crop top here that I have on with my bra under it, and not the tank top. Are you telling me I can do that? Is that allowed? Does that count? If I wore a sports bra, I feel like it would definitely be okay. This isn't a sports bra though. I feel like do they make a distinction? Like a sports bra is totally fine. What if I do some exercise? Does that fit the TOS? Is that okay? Only a sports bra? I think that's allowed, right? Are you telling me you have to cover the butt? I'm wearing shorts. I'm wearing shorts. Look. Yeah, the bra should be fine. Are you serious? Look, I'm wearing shorts. Okay. See? The butt is covered. She's a bunny. Oh my god. So, but the thing is, I don't think I'm allowed to... Are you allowed to remove clothing on the stream? If I go to my BRB screen and then take off my tank top and then come back. Yeah, that's not happening. Not happening. If you want to see that kind of thing, DM me. Oh my fucking god. Can't do that here. Are you serious? She's literally just in her bra. She's just in her underwear streaming. Paying to dress her up. Half-assing it. Yo, I don't think that actually fits the TOS. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Commit to the bit. I think you can remove clothing, but you can't do it sexily. I think that's the rule, right? Like I can't do a striptease on camera, but I could take off my jacket if I'm getting too hot or whatever. That's acceptable. Right? I think that's how the TOS goes. Anyway. So this guy had wrong ideas in his head. I thought everyone must have some expertise, so I accepted the idea of experts in charge of education. Experts. Everyone carries out the line that reflects his world outlook. A communist who makes a mistake in line but doesn't see it as a question of world outlook is not a true revolutionary. If you don't aim at a revolution with a determination, you can't succeed. For a communist, the question of correcting mistakes is a question of whether or not one can carry on the revolution. For this lesson, we paid a heavy price. We only learned it through mistakes. A good revolutionary must revolutionize his own mind first, before he can lead the masses. Only this way can we break with traditional ideas. We must make a big effort to do this. And then number 3. Pardon me. One must correctly handle the situation or the relation between a cadre and being an ordinary worker. As rank and file people, youths who knew next to nothing, we joined the revolution and grew up under Chairman Mao's guidance. Gradually, we became cadres and took on more and more responsibility. This was not because of any great merit of our own, but because the Communist Party and Chairman Mao cultivated and developed us. The credit belongs to the party, the Chairman Mao, or to Chairman Mao, and to the people. But after long years as cadres, we began to think that we were quite able. We thought we were above the masses. Like Antaeus in the fable, our feet left the ground. So we couldn't reflect the feelings of the people, and we couldn't carry out a revolutionary line. Chairman Mao's line reflects the common way of millions. A real revolutionary fighter must always understand that, and he must realize that he is an ordinary worker who must wholeheartedly serve the people. If we don't put ourselves in a correct relationship to the masses, we can't serve them or the revolution. Then we have lost the road as communists. I really need to get some fucking custom printed booty shorts. Maybe not with that on it. Maybe with the nuclear waste warning. Some of those phrases. This is not a place of honor. That kind of shit. Nothing of value was buried here. To make these points more vividly, Liu Bing told us about the 3 gifts which his colleague Hu Jian had received on being elected to the Revolutionary Committee of the May 7th Cadre School, which Tsinghua University stood up on wasteland in Jiangxi. These 3 gifts were: 1, a book of Mao Zedong's quotations; 2, a notebook inscribed with "Let Everyone Speak," a book that is for recording the criticisms and ideas of others; and 3, a carrying pole with 4 sentences burnt into it. Put this pole on your shoulder. Ow. Ah, my shoulder hurts. I can't do that. I'll do it this way. Remember Mao Zedong's teachings in your heart. Never forget the lessons of history. Continue making revolution and go forward. Always. Should I inscribe all of those phrases into my cane? I have other things inscribed into it, though they're difficult to see because they like fade over time. I don't know. I don't know if this is visible. Anyway. Liu Bing contrasted these gifts to the 3 gifts sorry, that Li Shaoqi and Bo Yibo had arranged. I love this guy's name, Bo Yibo. Okay. Had arranged. Get them printed on booty shorts and not too long. I'm gonna get remember Mao Zedong's teachings in your heart on the booty shorts, yeah. Liu Bing contrasted these gifts to the 3 gifts that Liu Shaoqi and Bo Yibo had arranged to give to every cadre at the provincial level or above after victory in 1949. Each of them received a woolen suit. Okay, hold on. An American-made Parker 51 pen. Wait, hold on, I actually have one of those. This is my massively oversized suit, coat, jacket thing. Okay. We've got the gifts of Liu Shaoqi. Okay, hold on. I actually have a Parker 51 pen. At least, it might not be a Parker 51, actually. It's a Parker, though, I think. I'm pretty sure. It's a Parker, right? It's a Parker Frontier. Sorry, not a Parker 51. My bad. Okay, so we've got the woolen suit. I have no idea if this is made of wool. I didn't check. It's made of 75% wool. We've got the woolen suit. We've got a Parker Frontier pen, not a Parker 51. Yeah, there's the... I don't know if this is going to work. Come on. Okay. There we go. Okay. And, what else? What's the other one? Oh, a Swiss watch. I don't have a Swiss watch. I'm not that fancy. I have a Russian watch. So anyway, we have 2 out of 3, roughly 2 out of 3 of Liu Xiaqi's gifts. Anyway. So anyway, these gifts pleased the cadres enormously. As they put on their woolen suits, strapped on their Swiss watches, and clipped their fountain pens into their pockets, they threw away their old Liberation Army fighting style and took up the life and outlook of officials. They became regular in dress and manner, and they made the desired impression on the urban bourgeoisie. Just mysteriously, oh my god. She's trying to rebrand as a top. Rebrand. My brand. So anyway, looking back with post-cultural revolution consciousness, it was easy to see that the suits, pens, and watches were not revolutionary gifts at all, but sugar-coated bullets, small bribes with big implications. Mao's Quotations, a book for criticism and a carrying pole, said to the cadres, study Mao Zedong thought, stay close to the people, and work hard. A woolen suit, a wristwatch, and a fountain pen said to the cadres, now you are somebody special. Here in the realm of cadre policy was a two-line struggle. To line up with the laboring people or to line up with the bourgeoisie? That was the question. Yeah, a lot of communists have problems with this two-line struggle, don't they? In 1971, Liu Bing saw it clearly. There was a two-line struggle in everything, that it was the big lesson that 3 years in the wilderness had taught him. It seemed unlikely that he would soon forget it. Okay, how long is this next chapter? Because we only have 20 minutes left. Long. It's long. We do not have time for that. Maybe? It's about 15 pages long. Do we have time for that? We'll start it. We'll see how far we get. Alright, chapter 25, Intellectuals Remolded. Before, when I was not yet 60, I used to want to be 60 as soon as possible so that the masses wouldn't be after me so much, so they would excuse me on account of my age. But now, since we have begun the transformation of education here and have recognized our past mistakes, I consider myself a young person, and I compete with youth on the road of revolution. These words were spoken by Qian Wei-chung, the professor of mechanics, and reflected great change in an erstwhile avowed rightist. They could be attributed in part to the hard work of those cadres in the workers' propaganda team who made the remolding and rehabilitation of the reactionary professors and the bourgeois academic authorities their main task, while a majority of the team had concentrated on the student movement, and a special group had worked with the set-aside cadres. This group had made the old professors their primary concern, and they had done a remarkable job with them. Among the other things, to transform the education at Tsinghua meant to transform these older professors whose knowledge was vital to the socialist transformation of China. This was a crucial test for Mao Zedong's policies. Mao's basic program for the Cultural Revolution, the 16-point decision, had called on the people to struggle against and overthrow those persons in authority who were taking the capitalist road, and to criticize and repudiate the reactionary bourgeois academic authorities. The aim of this criticism and repudiation was not to get rid of them, to dispense with their services altogether, but to transform them and bring them into the mainstream of working-class politics. So, is it just me, or is there literally nothing wrong with that? This is one of the reasons why Western liberals especially accuse Mao of being anti-intellectual. Mao was like one of the most overly intellectual guys on the goddamn planet forever, like in all of history, but okay, you know, it's just... I mean, he attacked academics. He was trying to get rid of the bourgeois character of certain academics. He wasn't getting rid of them. That wasn't the point. He was trying to make the education system more in touch and accessible to the masses. Am I wrong? Anyway. So, Liu Shaoqi had a policy of unity with the academic authorities, which in practice meant unity on their terms. The ultra-left students wanted only to attack them, and were quite willing to do without academic authorities altogether. Mao's policy was to unite with them, but unite for socialist goals, which meant that they had to be remolded, something that could only occur if the Cultural Revolution touched their souls. Mao summed up his views on this question as follows. The majority, or the vast majority, of the students trained in the old schools and colleges can integrate themselves with the workers, peasants, and soldiers, and some have made inventions or innovations. They must, however, be re-educated by the workers, peasants, and soldiers under the guidance of the correct line and thoroughly change their old ideology. Such intellectuals will be welcomed by the workers, peasants, and soldiers. Oh my god, yeah, exactly. It's exactly ATS. As soon as the workers' propaganda team brought the fighting to an end, that is, on July 28, 1968, study classes were set up for the old professors. They had me read Mao Zedong's works, said Qian, especially his speech at the Conference on Propaganda Work. After each paragraph, they asked me where I stood in the struggle. I recalled my whole history and examined each stage of it. This took 2 months. I didn't know how to study, so they held long individual talks with me. In September 1968, we had 17 long talks, each of 3 hours duration or more. Once we began at 7 a.m. and ended at 5 a.m. Because of a problem that I didn't understand. All this study made me realize that my past road was wrong. I was encouraged to do what I had never done before, even in the anti-rightist movement of 1957, to make a self-criticism. Intense study convinced Qian Weicheng, Tong Shibai, and many others that there was something basically wrong about their attitude and work in the past, but it took more than study and discussion to inspire them with a new set of ideals and goals. The next step was to involve them in productive work, where they could get to know and share the life of ordinary people. Ah, yes, yet another reason why people slander Mao as anti-intellectual. They sent academics out to work among ordinary people. Oh no, being in touch with masses? No, the masses? No, you can't do that. That's anti-intellectual. 2 forms of work experience. It's very clear that when liberals say intellectual, they mean like... They mean it in a very elitist way, so to speak. They mean it in like a... like as a higher class of person. They very clearly think regular everyday people are a lower class of people mentally or something, and that forcing an intellectual, a person of higher caliber, according to liberals, to go even be in any sort of contact with these scum, these bottom feeders, is just horrible. So horrible. Absolute tyranny. Anyway. Two forms of work experience were organized by the team. The first was to go into a Beijing factory for an extended period. The second was to go down to the Tsinghua University May 7th Country School, established on the shores of Poyang Lake in Jiangxi Province. There, intellectuals joined in reclaiming lake-bottom land and planting it to crops. Tong and Tian were among those who went into factories. Both thought that since they were targets of the Cultural Revolution, their main function would be to serve as negative examples. They would labor hard, take part in study classes, and listen to criticism from others. They were surprised when they were asked to set up technical courses for the plant workers and lecture in their special fields. Both learned as much from direct attempts to teach workers as they did from taking part in productive labor. My first class went pretty well, said Tong. Everyone sat still and listened, but my second class fell apart. The workers, all of whom had a lot of practical experience with electricity, said, "Your lecture is too empty. We can't take it. You set up too many rules and too many complicated formulas, blah. When we listen to you, we lose all confidence in our ability to control electric power." This shook me. I always thought I had a useful ability as a teacher. I never expected failure in this field. I not only lost face, but perhaps even my rice bowl as well. But the propaganda team members worked with me, and we met in groups to discuss the class character of education, what people were trying to cultivate, and what a teacher should do to ensure revolutionary successors with working class consciousness. Gradually, we found the way. Qian Weizheng, for his part, went to the Capital Steelworks to work and teach. A series of incidents forced him to rethink his personal elitist philosophy. He laughed heartily as he told us about watching the furnace workers mark the ingots that they had produced. His first thought was that they were writing their names on the steel. As the writer of a whole series of technical books, he took for granted that attaching one's name to one's product was most important. Oh my god. In fact, there was nothing in life that had given him more pleasure than affixing his name to a completed work. If he had not been able to look forward to this, he doubted that he would have had the stamina to finish some of his more difficult books. The name, fame, and income that came with authorship made up for all the anguish of creation. Consequently, he assumed that producers just naturally required personal recognition. It's actually kind of dope. Yeah, exactly. When he looked more closely at the steel ingots, he found that the workers were simply marking batch numbers for purposes of quality control and to keep the output from consecutive and perhaps very unlike heats apart. He was embarrassed by his original thought. When he told the workers about it later, they all had a good laugh together. On another day, he went to fetch a piece of high-carbon steel. In the laboratory at Tsinghua, where he had modern testing equipment, he had lectured on the differences between high-carbon and ordinary steel, and had demonstrated again and again how to tell them apart through hardness tests of tensile strength, etc. But he had never had to pick up the original samples. An assistant had always done this work. Now he approached the steel rack in confusion. All the steel looked exactly alike. The rods and bars were all of a uniform blue-black with no apparent differences in weight or quality. Professor Qian lingered in a dark corner for many minutes wondering what to do. A young worker guessed his dilemma, came over quietly, and showed him how by hitting each piece with another piece of steel, one could tell from the sound which was hard and which was soft. Very true. Very true. Harder steel will make a nice ringing noise, more than a thuddy, clunky noise, I guess, in general. Anyway, Tian was embarrassed but grateful. This young worker was not calling him a fool or ridiculing him before the whole shop, but was patiently helping him. He thanked the young man profusely. The response was, "Never mind, Professor Tian. We always knew that your theory was divorced from practice, and now you know it too. Here on the production site, you can bring the two together." That was the end of the incident, but it made a profound impression on Qian. He realized that he had much more to learn from the workers than he had ever imagined. Yep. We still have this problem of engineers who don't work in the field, designing something. What's the best way to get feedback on your design or improve your design? It's to get feedback from the people who are actually using it, you know? You make a machine that that goes in a factory, you know? Talk to the workers who use it, you know? You're not the person who should be consulted on the functioning of the machine. The person who uses it every day should be, right? You designed it, sure, but they know how to work with it. They know how to fix small problems that come up with it regularly. A third incident drove this lesson home. The furnace workers discovered that the crystallized steel in the pouring channel at the base of the ingot always broke off at one particular spot. They wanted to know why. They brought Tian one of the broken pieces and asked for an explanation. Well, it's too brittle in that one spot. They brought Qian one of the broken pieces and asked for an explanation. Qian used a technique he had often used with students in the past. He thought of a highly technical term, which really said nothing at all. It's stress concentration, he said. I mean, I know what that means, but that's only because I'm a fucking nerd. This temporarily stumped the workers. They fell silent and walked off. It means that part of the fucking ingot cooled too quickly. It wasn't tempered properly or something. Duh. There's more stress, internal stress in the crystalline structure concentrated in that area of the ingot, and that's why it breaks there. Okay. This temporarily stumped the workers. They fell silent and walked off, but Qian had a feeling that they would be back the next day. All night long he tumbled the problem about in his mind. It was no use. He had no better explanation in the morning than he had had the day before. Sure enough, the workers returned for an explanation of stress concentration, and Qian had to admit that he had been bluffing. Let's study the question together, he suggested. Later, after some protracted collective research, they solved the problem. This was the first time I had ever admitted in public that there was something I didn't understand, said Qian. Oh my god. When dealing with theory, you can muddle through, but when you are up against practice, it is no use pretending. When the workers pressed me, I had to say that I didn't understand. For me, this was progress. The closer he came to ordinary people, the more Qian's attitudes changed. He knew something had really happened inside when he chose a research problem that was divorced from mathematics and in a field about which he knew very little. He chose this problem, the details were never spelled out, probably due to security, because of its critical nature, and tackled it collectively with other scientists, technicians, and workers, without giving too much thought to his personal name and fame. This was a new departure. Formerly, when choosing a topic for study, he had always picked something at which he could personally shine, checked in the library to make sure no one else had ever solved it, and then proceeded with the idea of enhancing his reputation. To choose something out of my field, to tackle it collectively, and to meet defeat and return to tackle it again, such a thing I had never imagined before, said Qian. At the height of the Cultural Revolution, I vowed never to undertake scientific work again. Yet here I was, up to my ears in work and already half transformed. Without this revolution, intellectuals like me would be a waste product. Now we have been saved. Yeah? Yep. The experience of labor at the May 7th Cadre School in Jiangxi was equally effective in transforming the outlook of intellectuals. We talked with Xia Mingyi, a young electrical engineer who had graduated from Shanghai University's School of Transportation when the educational line there was dominated by capitalist roaders. He had been told that if he loved China, served socialism, and worked hard where he was asked to work, he was politically advanced. But these standards only opened up the road for vocational expertise. Mastering technology was equated with serving socialism. Individual interest was equated with public interest, and Xia buried himself in the technical studies he loved, happily unaware of two-line struggle, of the class nature of his Shanghai education, of his own bourgeois outlook. Down at the May 7th Cadre School, he joined productive labor for the first time in his life. While a student, he had eaten remember bitterness meals of husks and bran that served to remind everyone of a rural past. But it wasn't until he ate such a meal after hard labor in the fields that it moved him to make him really think. This is so. When I was in school, one of our history teachers actually assigned this type of thing as extra credit. He assigned eat for a whole week like a medieval European peasant as an extra credit assignment. I think 1 or 2 people did it. Yep. It's a good practical lesson. Anyway, we planted rice and cut wheat, said Xia. After the wheat was cut, we had to carry it on poles to the threshing floor. The weather was so hot, we drank a jug of water each trip and sweated it all out on the way. Never had my metabolism functioned so rapidly. Planting rice gave me such a backache that I could not stand up. Pulling weeds with the sun overhead and the water evaporating down below made me feel faint. After that, eating the Remember Bitterness meal was different. After a whole year of labor, struggling with the sky and the earth and with my own thoughts, realizing that the peasants had often had nothing so good as the bran and the chaff, I understood the crime of class oppression and exploitation. I began to feel like a peasant, and wanted to make sure that the old days would never come back. Xie Guoheng, the Harvard-trained sociologist who heads the Tsinghua Library, had been with Xie in Jiangxi. This lean, bespectacled wisp of a man had made studies of Yunnan peasants and tin workers in the past, but had never entered the people's lives. His investigations had not been aimed at transforming society, but at making a name for himself in the academic field. He found life at the May 7th Cadre School very hard at first. There were no vegetables until the summer crops ripened, so they all ate bean curd day after day. Shi was used to his own private room, clean and neat. Sharing a hut with others was a shock. But when he figured out that it took the labor of 15 peasants to create his salary, he was ashamed. All his traditional feelings of superiority crumbled, and he began to ask himself, what contribution have I made? His favorite possession at home had always been a brush painting of peasants planting rice on a rainy day. In the picture, the peasants in their bamboo hats and their straw raincoats moved forward in line as the rain came slanting down. Sitting comfortably on his sofa, Shi appreciated the beauty and balance of the scene. Now suddenly I was in the picture, not looking at it. And it was raining too. I began to understand that labor is not easy. The grain doesn't just roll from the land. I was all shaken up. For decades, people had been supporting me, yet I despised them. This was a question of class feelings. When we carried grain to the threshing floor, I didn't carry much, but it got heavier and heavier as I walked along. The peasants saw that I was swaying with my load and taught me how to keep my balance. I was moved by their concern. Before liberation, I had ridden in sedan chairs with my weight pressed on the shoulders of laboring peasants, but I felt no pain at all. I had ridden all the way to my destination without a thought for the men beneath, but now when I met problems, they came to help me. Thus they showed their class feelings, and I realized that whom to serve was indeed the key question for intellectuals. I learned countless lessons from the farm laborers and peasants. During their early rice harvest, we left the threshed rice overnight in a pile on the threshing floor. The radio predicted rain. At 3 in the morning, the peasants called us to get up and cover the rice. I thought, why such a crisis? There will be time enough in the morning to save the grain. But no sooner did we have it covered than the rain fell hard. If it had been up to me, the crop would have been damaged. Later, we all worked in water up to our chests to save a dike that had sprung a leak. I couldn't help but admire the spirit of the peasants and the PLA men who jumped in without a moment's hesitation, linked arms, and formed a human chain. It was a profound education. A woman architect who helped save that dike told how she had turned a corner in her inner life that day. Her group had walked 2 hours under the hot sun to get to the work site. When she got there, she found she could not carry baskets of soil without getting dizzy. Since she could not work, her comrades urged her to go back to her lodgings on a motorcycle owned by the farm. I climbed on behind the young driver. The faster the motorcycle went, the sharper my mental struggle became. As long as my comrades remained, the dike would hold, but here I was running away. I had heard many stories about heroic people fighting floods, but just when I had a chance to contribute, I left. Halfway home, I asked the driver to stop. I got off, walked back, and worked the rest of the day. The trouble was that I had not fully decided to transform my world outlook. Once I had made up my mind, I found I could move ahead. On our last day at Tsinghua, we saw some very lively skits put on by faculty and students. Among them were several that dealt with the May 7th Cadre School in Jiangxi, and the liveliest and most humorous by far told the story of two intellectuals are assigned to raising ducks. Ducks, and how to make them pay. The first, a confirmed pessimist, knew that in the duckyard the stink rises to the sky, a whole pen full of shit with no place left to stand. Anyway, I'll try to temper myself. The second, a confirmed optimist, saw himself standing by a little river, peace all around. The little ducklings play in the water until the sky grows dark. Then in response to my shouts, wobble, 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 all come to my side. I, Commander-in-Chief of Ducks, lead them home. How can raising ducks present any difficulties? But on the first day, the ducks leave their stinking pen only to go completely out of control. When I tell them to go left, they insist on going right, and when I tell them to go back, they insist on going forward. When they reach the water, things really get in a mess. How do we say this? Yeah. Yeah. Call the duck herds in unison as they plunge into the river, but the ducks do not understand their dialect. They scatter hither and yon. Old Wang, do you still feel so poetic? Asks the pessimist. Poetic hell, says the optimist. I'm wet all over. By the time the ducks are last herded home, it is midnight. But with revolutionary commitment, the two intellectuals persist. An old peasant, Grandfather Wang, gives them lessons in the use of the duck whip. They learn to sweep maggots from the privy, wash them, and feed this delicacy to their charges. Finally, the optimist says, I have changed, and so have the ducks. When I stop walking forward, the ducks stand still. Wherever I point the duck whip, there they go. When they feel like they quack to me, and I understand their dialect. Truly, I am Commander-in-Chief of Ducks. Thus does the political flower, brilliant and bright, turn into economic fruit, shining and full. Experiences like these in factory and farm prepared Tsinghua's professors and teachers for the transformation of the university itself. If they were to replace the bourgeois orientation of their institution with a proletarian one, they had first to change their class stand, to reach out toward working people, whether shop workers or peasants, and realize the importance of serving them as the goal of education at whatever level. Though no one could argue that a few months, a year, or even several years in a factory or cadre school could completely transform an intellectual, still the experience of hard labor, the experience of working and studying alongside workers and peasants had a profound effect. Coming as it did on the heels of a mass repudiation of past practice at the university and a mass repudiation of the teaching methods and outlook of each staff member individually, coming as it did in the midst of an immense political struggle that racked the whole nation and involved everyone, whether they liked it or not, in politics, this grassroots labor certainly helped to turn people around, to set them on a new path, to open their eyes to the possibilities of a socialist future, which they had formerly either never imagined or never taken seriously. Whew. Hey, we finished the chapter and it only took us 7 extra minutes.